What's going on? This is Kareem, and I'm here in the lab to give you guys a really quick review video of the new Tractor Control S3 DJ controller. So if you guys remember, a few months ago we reviewed the Tractor Control S4 MK3, and that is a nice big beast of a controller. It has these cool actively spinning jog wheels, the first to ever do something like that. It also has all of your effects controls. It's built really well, really solid. I'll let you see the size comparison between the two. And we have the S4 over here to your right, which is my left, and here is the S3 on this side. And you can see there is a size difference here, even though they're both 4-channel DJ controllers. The S2 I don't have here at the moment, but that's smaller than the two of these because it has the 2 channels of mixing goodness, whereas the S3, which is tucked in between the two, now gives you all 4 channels of mixing goodness right there out of the box. It comes bundled with Tractor Pro 3. It also comes with Tractor DJ Pro, which is the iOS app that you can use with your iPods in order to DJ with. It's a fairly easy or simple way to DJ when you're using the iOS app. It's pretty straightforward. It allows you to do minimal effects and minimal mixing here and there. But the best way to DJ with this device, I think, is with the Tractor Pro 3 software, which you can use with your computer. It comes bundled with both of those, so it gives you options in order to play with both. Here we have the Tractor Control S4. We'll put that off to the side. And with the S3, the construction is not on par with what you see on the S4. They do have very similar jog wheels, which I do like the weight of. They have nice metal top jog wheels. But other than that, it feels exactly like the cheaper construction on the new S2 MK3. And that is one of my gripes with the unit. At this price point, coming in at $650, I would assume that they'd have a little bit thicker of a chassis here, maybe more metal reinforcements in it. It does feel pretty cheap overall, like it's made from cheaper plastic, and the build quality. So the build quality, we'll have to see how it holds up over time. I've only had it for a good month or so, so I don't know how long it's going to hold up, how it's going to last. But with any DJ controller nowadays, you're going to want to protect it and get a bag or a case for it anyway. So that's up to you whether that's a big gripe with you or not. But again, $650. There's other controllers on the market, not for Tractor Pro, of course, but for other different DJ software that will give you a much more robust and a much longer lasting, or definitely a more sturdier feeling controller. So let's take a look at all of the inputs and outputs. Right on the front, you have your microphone input, and that can be controlled using your line D when you have that selected. You also have your 2 different headphone sockets in the front. You have your 1/4 inch and you have your mini jack. On the back, you have your power DC in, and you do need a power brick with this, unfortunately. You also have your USB cable that can connect directly to your computer. Then you have your iOS cable, so that can connect directly to your iPads. Then you have your line D, which can also be an external line source in, so that's your auxiliary input. You do have one here, and that's controlled with line D. So remember, you can only mix with your 3 channels if you're using line D for your external source, or if you're using it for your microphone. Then you have your booth TRS output. You have a Kensington lock area. Then you have your main RCA and main XLRs. So you do get a pretty decent feature set when it comes to all of your outputs being checked. And you also have at least one input here. There's no standalone mixing mode, but of course, if you want that, you have to move up to the Tractor Control S4 MK3. Right now, as it stands, the S3 only has that one auxiliary input, but at least they gave you something so that way you can perform with this on the go. It's almost like an S2 MK3 beefed up to support 4 channels, basically, but it also gives you a little bit more in terms of inputs and outputs as well. And the cost definitely is going to reflect that, again, at $650. So let's put this on the desk and see exactly all of the features and functions that come included with the Tractor Control S3. Alright, so here it is. This is the Tractor Control S3. We have all the way at the bottom, we have the crossfader here. It's a pretty plasticky feeling crossfader, like kind of the rest of the build here, but it is serviceable and it actually does work pretty well. It's not too long of a cut-in distance, so you can pull off some of your scratches here, especially considering how nice the jog wheels feel, and we'll get on that a little bit later. Next is your line faders. These have a little bit more resistance, a little more tension to them. Perfectly good for mixing. Again, they do have a plasticky kind of feel to them, but they do have more of a glidey nature to them, so they're better for them long throw mixes that you're going to be pulling off on the S3. You also have your cue buttons at the top, so that way you can play whatever is going to be in your cue section, or you can play what's into your master, and that's what you use this top knob here for. This is your mix knob. Then you have your volume control knob here as well for your headphones, and headphone ports are on the front. Next, you have your mixer effects section. Here you have a filter that's already programmed into there, and then you have a few other effects that you guys can select right here on the fly. They have on-off buttons to them. You can use things like noise. You can also use things like echoes and delays. They have a few that you can choose from within the Traktor Pro 3 software. But right now we're just going to be working with the filter and the others that we have in here now, just so you can get a quick example of those effects. You have on-off knobs, and then you have a low and high pass of that effect that you're choosing.
Hollywood, money, rule the evil, and $1,000 bag it. Look, I took the game and put it right back where my head at. Back up in the streets, fuck with me, I wasn't having that. Animal ambition back in the kitchen, back up in my habitat. Money start to gravitate. These niggas ain't but got it. Look, I'm on the pages with bitches. See, we just playing the shit.
So that's the regular mixer effects that you have here. Those are the only effects that you have on board here. Sadly, they don't have the effect modules for FX1 and FX2 at the top like the Traktor Control S4 MK3. I really miss those, so that's another one of my minor gripes with the S3. I wish they did include those 3 effects knobs at the top, so that way you have your 2 modules along with your mixer effects. You also have your low, mid, and high EQs. These are adjustable within the software to be ISO, or you can have them as regular EQs. You have your LED meters here. They have really good metering here, actually. There are several LEDs long, and you really get to see when you're clipping and when you're not. Then you have your master LEDs here off to the side, along with your booth volume knob, which corresponds to the TRS on the back. Then you have your master control volume knob, which corresponds to the RCA and the XLR outputs on the back. All the way at the top, you have gain knobs for each of your 4 channels. And channel D you can actually use with external sources. You can either have that as a microphone or as the line. So when you're using microphone and line, you're going to want to use your external sources, and you can do that here very easily on the fly using your last channel. Unfortunately, you don't have an extra spare channel if you're going to be using all 4, but most DJs that are going to be using this are probably only going to be using 2 or 3 channels at a time so it's okay to have your mic and your line there at the same. Next, we'll move right along to the jog wheels and the actual deck sections. The deck sections are identical here. They're not like mirrored, they're actually the same, so that way you can not get confused no matter what side you are on from the mixer section. All the way at the top, you have your browse functions here. This is a nice forever encoder, so that way you can go up and down your track list, and you can push the encoder in order to select the track you want. You can also change the view within Traktor here by using the view knob. Then you can also go back and forth within your different library folders, and that way you can select the tracks that you want on the fly. You have your transport modes. You either have your reverse button here, which will allow you to monetarily reverse for bleeping out curse words and such. And then you have your flux button, which allows you to act like a slip mode within the Pioneer and the Serato DJ communities. You're able to do different scratching and different hot cues and do different things while the playhead still remains in the place it would have been if you've never done anything. So. You also have your reverse again. Then you have your grid mode for your jog wheel, so that way you can adjust your grids on the fly, so that way you can get your beats perfectly aligned nice and well within Traktor. And then you have your jog wheel mode, whereas you can use the jog wheel for scratch mode, or you can use the jog wheel as more of a speed up and slow down. You have your deck select for deck A and deck C. You can see everything changes to a different color, so that way you know you're in a different deck. On the other side, you have both B and D. Next, you have your plastic buttons. These are all plastic buttons, by the way. They're not like rubberized or anything, except for your performance pads. You have your cue button, you have your play pause, Then you have your hot cues and samples button, so that way you can either use hot cues here on your pads or you can use samples. These hot cue pads also will allow you to save your different loops or your cue loops, so you can just have places where you're just queuing up loops instead of just regular plain old hot cues. You can also use your remix decks here with your samples, so that way you can do some different things with remix decks here on the fly. You also have your move. This is so you can move between your different bars that you're already playing in the beat or in the song. And you also have your loop encoder that allows you to press for the loop, and you can double and half the loop by twisting left and right. You also have a tempo slider here. This tempo slider is pretty good here. It's better than what you get on the S2. It's a little bit bigger, but it feels nice and smooth and just good enough to get your mixes on. You have a key lock button and a sync button here as well. And the jog wheels, these are really, really good jog wheels. They're pulled from the S4 MK3, meaning they feel the same. They have about the same exact size to them. They do not have that actively spinning feature, but they do feel really, really good, and it's really tight integration with Traktor, and they just feel right. They have a good weight to them, and they're definitely serviceable, definitely cool enough for scratching on, even without that haptic feedback and that actively spinning platter like the S4 MK3. The pads themselves do have like a center click to them. They have like a click when pressed. Let's see if you can hear it. Some people like that, some people don't. I don't have really any preference to them. They are rather small pads, but they definitely are very, very responsive, and they work very well. So in conclusion, the new Traktor Kontrol S3 is a pretty good middle point between the S4 MK3 and the S2 MK3. If you need 4 channels of mixing goodness, you need all 4 decks, then you're going to have to look at this over the S2, or you can also look up at the S4 MK3, which will give you a lot more features and functions, but again, you have to pay more in terms of price. It does come bundled with Traktor Pro 3, the full software. It also comes bundled with the full Traktor DJ2 for iOS, which is a main plus, so that way you can use this with your computer or you can use this with your iPads as well. It also has really cool jog wheels. I really like the feel of these new Traktor jog wheels. They feel just as good as they do on the S2, and they feel nice and weighty, have a real good weight to them. They don't have too much tension, and they are very, very accurate, and they're good, nice, full size. The S3 also has a decent number of inputs and outputs. At least they give you a microphone input, and you also have your aux line input for channel D, and then you have all 3 of your outputs, giving you a booth, separately controlled booth with TRS, and you also have a main output, which is both XLR and an RCA. On the downside, for me, it's definitely got to be the price. The price is $650 at the time of this review, and for that price, you can look at other software, different controllers that are supported by like Serato and Virtual DJ. You have out there, you have the SR2, which is more robust. It has a weightier feel. It has more metal in the construction. It just feels a little bit better. It also has inputs, so you can use your external sources. You also have the Mixars Primo, which is out there, which is cheaper, and that has a lot of the same functionality, but of course that's with Serato DJ. But if you want to use a 4-channel DJ controller in Traktor, this is probably going to be where it's at, or the Traktor Kontrol S4 MK3. Also on the downside, it has a lack of your FX modules. You have your FX1 and FX2 modules that you won't be able to use here. You only have your mixer effects. Of course, you can have another controller, or you can have your laptop actually showing you those controls, and you can use those controls on your laptop, and it will come back out in your performance. But it's much better to have those effects controls right here on the face as you do with the S4 MK3. And another one of my final minor gripes is the pretty much plastic build of the S3. I felt like they could have had a little bit more metal in there. It could have felt more sturdy and more robust like the S4, but we really have like an S2 style of construction here, and again at that price point I would like to see a little bit more done with the construction front of the S3. So for more on the written review, you guys can head on over to www.djbooth.net/DJS. You can just type in there Traktor. You can see all of the reviews that we've done for all of the Traktor products over the years. Make sure you guys hit the thumbs up if you like videos like this. Make sure you subscribe because we have a lot more videos definitely before the holidays that's coming right at you. And as always, thanks for watching.